Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to be bringing you this topic on first-time manager training. Today's webinar is sponsored by Upper Peninsula Health Plan. UPHP is committed to making a healthier Upper Peninsula. Find out more from uphp.com. And a little bit about us, Great Lakes Center for Youth Development. We provide nonprofit organizations with resources, expertise, and learning opportunities in all 15 counties of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I know a few of you on the line today either don't work for a nonprofit or aren't in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, but that's okay. This topic kind of transcends all barriers, geography, business type, all of those things. So we believe that by creating these communities, we need to foster a culture that builds on the strengths of young people. And having a strong nonprofit sector really helps to provide what youth need to thrive and is critical for community progress. So that's a little bit about us, and that's why we're hosting this webinar today. We've heard from a lot of nonprofits that this is a topic that they really wanted to learn more about. So I'm excited to introduce you to our two amazing presenters, Chad and Karen Thompson from GLCYD. They are not going to be taking questions today just to make sure that we keep the webinar to a half an hour, but you can submit your questions. I will get them and we'll be able to follow up with you one-on-one. It does show your information when you submit a question, so we'll be able to email you a response. Either Chad or Karen will do that. So feel free to submit questions as the webinar progresses, and we'll follow up afterwards. And we'll also be doing a survey following the webinar, and one of the questions is going to be, what topics do you want to see in the future? So as you're listening to the webinar, if things come up, you're like, man, I'd love to learn more about that, feel free to include that in the survey. This webinar was actually Chad will talk a little more about the feedback we got, but this was a direct ask from a couple organizations that wanted more information on it. With that, I'm happy to pass it over to Chad to get us rolling.
Thank you, Victoria, and welcome everybody. Just to re-emphasize too, she mentioned the half-hour format. This is not meant to be the end-all, be-all answer to this topic. However, we're just going to touch on just two key points that we think would be very, very valuable to first-time managers and frankly to any manager, whether they're first-time or not. As she mentioned, we're asking some feedback because I think this could be a series ongoing of different facets to managing and especially helping those first-time managers. So our training objectives today is Karen is going to be talking about onboarding as a way to kickstart a new employee's success. And I'll be touching base on using coaching to create healthy work relationships and productive and happy employees. So what we've been hearing, what we heard when we started asking some feedback, is that we've been hearing a lot of first-time managers are really frustrated. They're frustrated that employees aren't taking responsibility for their work, or simply the work is just not getting done. And so we're going to tackle that approach from a very different way than some of you may operate or think about how managing or supervising is supposed to go, or maybe things you've seen modeled. We at GLCYD really emphasize positive youth development as one of our core values, and likewise, if we can say youth development because that's part of our mission, but really it's positive and growth mindset that we really like to try to promote. Coaching is really a natural progression and outpouring of that mindset. In other words, what it does is it's looking at emphasizing the positives and emphasizing the opportunities for growth rather than looking at things from a strictly critical or corrective measure. So as you listen today, we're going to challenge you to reflect on your role and why the employees you work with aren't doing what you tell them to do, and reflect on what your role is in helping them be successful in your organization. So the very first part of building a successful employee is how you integrate them into your organization. And with that, I will turn it over to Karen.
Thanks, Chad. So here's a picture of Chad on his very first day of work with us. And a real simple thing you can do right there in the picture is to make a welcome sign for your new employee. So the difference between orientation versus onboarding, you hear both terms, and they're not mutually exclusive. Think of orientation as an event that's part of the onboarding process, and you'll know when onboarding is complete when your employee is fully integrated and working independently at their job. And onboarding, doesn't have to be real complicated. It doesn't need to be expensive. It's not rocket science, but you do need to be mindful and intentional about it, and it doesn't hurt to have an ounce of patience thrown in there too. So a few goals for an onboarding program that you can have are, like I mentioned, by the time they complete their onboarding, employees understand their role, how they fit into the organization, some of the unwritten nuances of your organization. This is really a critical time for you as the supervisor to build trust between you and your new employee. It's kind of, think of it as, they talk about the first impression, and if you mess up that first impression, it's hard to recover from that. And this, in my opinion, it fits into that same thing. So by the end, they're fully functional in their role. They know how to problem solve and who to go to when they need information and that type of thing. So I wanted to give you a couple tips for building your onboarding program and how to make it more successful. The core of your onboarding program is going to pretty much be the same, but you need to customize it to each role within your organization and to each person. Each person who comes in is going to have a different background and different experiences, so you take that into consideration. You'll also want to build in some performance evaluation pieces so that you can track their progress of how they're doing and where they might need more support. When I talk about being present, I really mean that literally and figuratively, and that's where your patience might come into play there. Because you could be thinking, I've got 10 other things that I need to get done today, but I really encourage you to be present with them when they need you during that training, to really hear them and work with them in those critical moments. And don't schedule vacation time when you've got a new employee coming on board. You want to, really be there for them, especially in that first week is really critical. It's helpful to have a buddy system if you can do that, to have that second resource person who, sometimes going to your supervisor is a little intimidating. So if you have that second staff member that they can go to and ask questions and bounce things off, and it's hopefully someone that will volunteer for that role, someone who you can trust as a supervisor also, who is committed to your organization and your mission, and they're not going to do anything to sabotage this new person and their success in starting. Make it fun. Who doesn't like to have fun when they're learning something? We've used scavenger hunts. If you have information like out on your website maybe that you want to make sure someone knows about and how to navigate to it, build it into a scavenger hunt. There's lots of tips out there and ways to make onboarding fun, and that retention will be that much longer. And think about your own learning style, your own quirks. If you're not a morning person, plan for maybe some independent study time first thing, those first maybe hour of the day or whatever that time period is. If you might need some of your own time, structure it so they can do some things independently. Your employee is going to have their own learning style. They may be more of an auditory learner versus a visual learner, and learning, how can you best transfer this information to them. They might be an introvert, so if they're not participating in a staff meeting as much, that might be why. They might need that separate time away from being in a group setting to process and think through things. And in the end, ask for their feedback of how you can improve your process for a new person down in the future. You know, your own personal role as the supervisor and maybe other roles that other employees played in their onboarding process, and get their feedback on how you can improve that process. And the key is really that through this whole process is to communicate and build that structure where they feel safe to come to you and you can work with them and keep communicating. And that kind of really leads into the coaching role that Chad's going to talk about more. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chad.
Thank you, Karen. And I just want to kind of back up what Karen was just talking about. She used the picture from my first day, and I had never gone through a true onboarding process before coming here to GLCYD. I've been through orientations, I've been through, you know, new employee training, all this kind of different things, but never a true onboarding process. And it's not a short thing. It takes time. It gives that employee time to really feel integrated and a part of things and truly understand their role. And I just remember hitting the ground here feeling like I was more equipped and ready to tackle my job, and not that. And I bet you so many people listening have felt that feeling where you're just thrown into a job and said, just go ahead and do it. And you're like, what? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. This onboarding process really allows you to really feel a little more confident in what you're supposed to be getting done and knowing your expectations and not worried about falling short right off the bat, because everyone's terrified that the learning curve in a new job. So really look at that, investing that kind of energy and time. That's the biggest thing, is the energy it takes for a supervisor to really get someone on board and make themselves available. Which goes in, as she said, perfectly into coaching. And again, mentioning the coaching is it's a more positive approach. This is what coaching really comes to. It says, if we spent the time and energy to hire you to do a task and a role in our organization, then I truly believe you are capable, intelligent, and able to do the job that I hired you for. Because my question is, if you don't believe those things about your new employee, then why did you hire them? That's the whole idea. So if you believe that they are capable, intelligent, and able to do the job that you just hired them for, then we as managers and supervisors need to treat them that way. Not treat them at that they can't do their job or looking for where they're making mistakes, rather look at where we can really direct them and help them improve and grow as an employee. So I have this kind of different dichotomy here, this coaching versus discipline. You know, coaching's leading versus dictating. We'll talk about each of these as I go along. It's listening versus telling. It's building cooperation rather than conflict. The end result actually is higher retention versus turnover. Any person with an HR background or finance background will tell you right now, one of the most costly things for an organization is turnover. Because then you go back to retraining a new person who doesn't know what they're doing, so their effectiveness is less, et cetera, et cetera. It's a vicious cycle and very expensive. Much cheaper to retain and fully equip a worker than it is to keep going turnover with new people. And it is a proactive approach rather than a reactive. You'll see when I just start talking about disciplinary, discipline is actually reacting to an action, whereas coaching is going to be out in front of that, hopefully cutting off some of those things or actually finding solutions. So getting into what coaching really is, see, poor performance, we look at poor performance and say this person's just not performing really well in their job. That calls for correction, whereas a misconduct calls for discipline. And those are two very big different things. Coaching offers and allows time for correction. Misconduct leads to disciplinary actions, which is that you're in big trouble type of stuff. Discipline should not be an everyday tool. Discipline should be reserved for big issues like insubordination, policy violations, and other things that you would deem as misconduct. So it's big things. See, coaching, ongoing coaching, can help you avoid disciplinary action. Coaching is establishing a healthy relationship of mutual respect, treats the employee like an adult, and it really, again, you're telling them, I believe in you, and I believe that I hired the right person for the job. It helps the employees succeed, not simply complete a task that we give them, and that's a big difference. Coaching is active listening, clear communication, well-defined expectations that then avoid confusion and conflict. Ending a conversation in agreement and verbal acknowledgement is key to coaching. And then keeping your emotions in check as you coach. So one of the big things we'll talk about just in a minute, I have a little acronym to share with you all, shows that in coaching, you're leading your subordinates, your employees, to their own solutions, so that when they come up with solutions with you, they own it. So it's when they go back to complete the task and roles and responsibilities, they have ownership of it and not simply turning to a coworker and saying, yeah, I was told I have to do this. The attitude is different. One is believing in them and trusting them to do their job. The other one is treating them essentially, I hate to say this, but like children that need to be told every second what to do. And hopefully you believe in your employees to say, no, you know what, I trust you can do this. So I'm not really huge on acronyms. Usually I actually make fun of them. But I found, and doing research for this topic, I found this acronym, and it's kind of a little too cheerleader-ish, but I don't care. We're going to use it anyway. And it's called Win Big. So let me work through these different steps. These are coaching steps that you can help start implementing this with your employees, should you wish. And I think we've actually seen a lot of, I've actually done some research, and using a coaching method of managing your employees leads to, and there's actually hard evidence, leads to healthier, happier, and far more productive employees versus the ones who are under a discipline and dictating culture, which then kind of grudgingly do their job and do their work because it is strictly a job. And they lack kind of the passion because they don't have much ownership. So win big. Let's start off with our very first thing. The W stands for wonder about a root cause. So if you need to talk to your employee about something, it could be a problem. It could be just a check-in with them. First thing you want to do when you're hearing their story of what's going on and maybe something that concerns you is, before you jump into problem-solving mode, first get curious about what is causing the issue or the problem. So you're not jumping to simply saying, you're not doing this. The first thing is, again, the active listening part. You're asking questions. So what is going on? You know, what is really causing this problem? What's holding you back from accomplishing this goal? So you're asking them and giving them a chance to voice what exactly is going on. You might discover that there are a lot of things happening in that person's life. Now, granted, that does not mean it's a good excuse all the time, but just it gives you a foundation and a framework to say, okay, now I know where they're coming from. And we can build off of that rather than jumping into solving the problem or using negative language about get your act together. So just learn, discover what the root cause of the problem is. The second one, the I, is investigate wants. This visioning. It's to get a clear about what they really want in the situation and who they want to be as a result of it. So again, you're giving them the power of saying, all right, here's the outcome. What does it look like? The end game, the desired result, what does that look like? And what would it take for you to feel like you're successful in this situation? Again, you're giving power back to that employee to be able to be problem solvers for themselves rather than stepping in as the big adult to tell them what to do. So you really investigate and have them come up with the idea of what does the end game look like for you. And even like this question, how would you like people to describe you after you move forward in this situation or after this is resolved? So those are a couple of good things about setting that vision for them. The N is name possible solutions. This is your typical brainstorming, potential ways to solve whatever the issue or problem is. Encourage them to come up with a bunch of different ideas and solutions. Some might be ridiculous, some might be reasonable, but don't evaluate them at first. Just, again, true brainstorming is just throwing out ideas about how they can get through this. And then you can provide some of your own ideas once they've kind of exhausted, but be careful and that you don't try to push them towards one of your solutions right away. Let them come up with most of the solutions. And then once you've had them, the brainstorming done, you have a list of things, help them analyze and choose one. So focus on the person you're coaching rather than on which you telling them which option you prefer. Really ask them which one they think and why they think that solution could work in this situation. So, but here's the thing for all of you who's going, I don't want to give that much power to my employee. What if they come up with a ridiculous solution that just won't work for our organization or business? That's right, you're still the manager, you're still the supervisor. So just because your person you're coaching prefers a certain solution, that does not mean you have to just unilaterally support it, because sometimes there's solutions you can't support, whether it's for business reasons or it just doesn't falls outside the realm of what you're comfortable allowing them to do. Just make sure that when you say no or say let's change directions, it's not for a personal preference, but it has a real reason behind it. Like, yeah, that's not going to work for us because of XYZ. So you can instead phrase something that okay, I hear your solution, but here's what I can get behind, and here's part of why I can't support that type of thing. So what else could get you to where you want to go and to solve this issue? So you can kind of redirect them, again, not flat out telling them you're wrong, but rather redirect them to pick a different solution that might be a little bit more in line with what your organization thinks is appropriate. So, so again, you're not giving up complete power for them just to pick any kind of solution. You're helping them guide through the process of picking the best solution. The B for the big is building a plan. So once you've picked one of your possible solutions, you have that person work with that person to develop a practical and actionable plan to get them to where they want to go. So again, questions you can ask them is, so what kind of steps do you need to take to get you to this goal? And when will you do that? And what kind of support do you need from me or other resources from the organization or your coworkers to ensure that you are successful? So that's the kind of building that plan, but make sure there are steps, action steps, to get that person moving forward. If there's not action steps and it's just a big vague answer, most likely people just let that hang out there and won't ever take the steps towards solution, towards growth, towards improvement. The next I is inspiring action, which includes the accountability factor. This is important now for all you traditional managers that are going, wow, this is way too touchy-feely for me. This is where the part you might be more comfortable with is keeping them accountable. So here's where you inspire action. So once you have that plan, you need to build in some accountability for taking those steps. So otherwise, if you don't build in that accountability, again, other things will pop up. Those things that are urgent and seem important will put this off to the side. So kind of ask them the questions. How will you let me, or will you let me know how this is going? How much time do you need before I check back in with you and see where you're at with this plan? Discuss what you should do, you as the manager should do, if the employee, does not follow through on their commitments. So you could ask stuff like, how would you like me to follow up if I don't hear back from you? Or if you don't follow through, how should I help you get back on track? But here's the big thing for you managers. Then that falls on you, because you have to be sure that you follow through. If you're keeping them accountable, you need to actually keep them accountable and follow through with whatever plan you set up to check back with them. If you don't, it sends a really bad message, not only to that employee, but to everybody, because people talk, and it will jeopardize future coaching solutions, because now they're going to start losing faith in the process. So definitely make sure that if you say you're going to follow up, you follow up. And the G is my favorite one, because this is where I've seen the greatest success in my time of managing people, which has been quite a bit over the years, is giving affirmation. And more important than affirmation, some people hate that because like, oh, we have to keep praising them. Then don't use that term if that bothers you. Then use the one validation. You are validating their improvement, the work, whatever it is that they're trying to move forward to. So you want to acknowledge that person's hard work and their commitment to professional and personal growth. You know what, we set this plan, you delivered on the plan, we followed up, and you completed the plan. That's excellent. This is showing me as your supervisor that you take this seriously, that you want to grow and be more productive, be a better teammate, be a better whatever it might be that you're working on. And so to validate that, to give affirmation, say, job well done. It doesn't have to be all flowery and super sweet. It's just making sure you take that opportunity to say, this is great. So you're asking yourself, what strengths do I see in this person? How do I see them growing? What do I see in them that maybe they're not seeing in themselves? And how are they different than when we started this process? So here's the big thing. Be sincere. If you start giving affirmation out just because you feel like you have to, it's going to fall on deaf ears, because people can tell when you're being insincere, when you're being fake. And after you give the affirmation, you don't have to keep babbling on and on and on. Let it sink in. Give them time to hear it and accept it and let it sink in, because that's important for it to be stuck really in their memory. So the ultimate goal of coaching, again, is getting them from one place where maybe they're not succeeding very well or they're struggling to a place where they are accomplishing a certain goal, task, or resolving a certain conflict. And this is a way to give them power back over that. It's the difference between this. Someone just the other day in a training I was doing mentioned this. And it's really a way to gauge yourself as a manager and how your employees kind of view you right now and the changes you can make to kind of hopefully build in this more positive and coaching mindset is when one of your employees is called to your office, how is that viewed? In other words, are they walking and going, oh boy, what did I do now? Versus, oh, great, so what do we need to talk about? In a coaching mindset, which I'm very happy to say that I exist under here at GLCYD, I am never nervous when my boss calls me to our office. Usually my first thought is there's got to be a project we need to work on together. Because that open communication, we have every other week check-ins where we're constantly working on things together and coming up with these solutions, using these kind of steps to move me forward in the tasks and responsibilities I have here at GLCYD. But I never look at going to our office as, oh no, I'm in trouble. If your employees look at being called to your office as, oh no, I'm in trouble, you may want to rethink your approach if you really want to create an environment of that Karen mentioned of trust and mutual respect that gets them to be improving on themselves and passionate about what they do and not simply begrudgingly going to their job for a paycheck. So emphasizing that they are capable people that can do their job, and that's why you hired them. Otherwise, again, maybe look at your hiring practices if you cannot say that about your employees. Or maybe you look at yourself and say, all right, what can I do to improve the way I am supervising and managing people? And these are some just tools. So if any of these specific areas kind of address the need in your organization, but obviously that was quick, that's just under half an hour. It wasn't meant to be an end-all be-all, but we're more than happy to work with your organization to go deeper in that issues or other ones when it comes to managing people for either for the first time or rebuilding trust if you've lost it and you've been managing for a while. But whatever it might be, we are here to help your organization improve themselves and be more effective, more efficient, hopefully have happier environments. And so we just want to thank you for giving us a half hour of your time today. And please throw out those questions, and Victoria will get them to me and Karen, and we can help you answer them. And hopefully we'll get some great ideas for other topics for managers and come back with maybe an ongoing series. We'll see what you guys think. So make sure you fill out that survey. We really ask you to do that. Take the time to do that. So thank you again from here at us, GLCYD, and have a great rest of your afternoon.